I would like to welcome all our guests and our loyal members tonight for our first program of 2016. But before we get started, we have a little Historical Society business to take care of. Our treasurer, Tammy Eskridge, has posted the treasurer's report that needs to be approved. Do I have a motion to approve? It was Steve, so I'm effective. Approved? I can't hear very well. Yeah? Okay. And who will second that? Thank you. Madam Secretary Tito Bernardin has posted the minutes from our last meeting. We also need approval for that. Do we have a motion for approval? Thank you, Stu. And will we have a second for that motion? Thank you, Dad. Everybody get your 50-50 raffle tickets, because right after we see this great program, we're going to be pulling the numbers, one ticket out, and you'll get to split the pot. Make sure you get that. I'd like to encourage you to come join us afterwards in the archives and see what Sharon and her team has put up. Denise has put up a great costume for us tonight to see from our MGM collection, and I encourage you to come into the arc. Also, around our beautiful new costume is these fantastic photographs that Tom Sparks in the Class of '64 newspaper from Culver High put together and donated to the archives, which we have here forever now. And it is displayed around the costume in the archive. I also must remind you, there's no drinking of water or any kind of sodas or anything in the archives. I also would like to acknowledge some of our special guests tonight. Steve Rose, as usual. Joran Erickson, our new council member, thank you very much for winning. Our city attorney, Carol Schwab. Those two right there. May is National Historic Preservation Month.
Oh, it was school board.
Oh.
Sue Robin.
I don't know who you are. Hi, I'm Hope. Has-been mayor.
Julie's a senior has-been. She got me introduced as the forward school board member.
But Sue is currently on that.
Hi, Sue. Well, Mike Cohen's here, who I think he should actually get involved with the Dodgers. Anyway, as we may know, May is National Historic Preservation Month, which makes this program of the renovation of Robert Frost Auditorium so great. Built in 1963 by Fung and Moody, it's been the home of many a student, including myself and many of you that are here tonight. This magnificent auditorium and its incredible design has withstood 53 years of assemblies, performances in drama, band, dance, and many musicals. The stagecraft room, the drama room, and now the black box has been a playground in the development of young dreams of working in theater and in film. It was even featured in Woody Allen's film Sleeper, which was a thrill for many of us to see on the big screen. It is a great pleasure tonight that we have Craig Hodgetts of Hodgetts and Fung, whose firm is in Culver City, located right here, to share with us what they are doing with their renovation of the Robert Frost Auditorium, bringing it back to life so that we may have another 53 years for our students and our families to dream from their seats and watch from the stage. Hodgetts and Fung is a studio made up of architects and designers with special expertise in the design of unique places for learning, cultural events, and civic functions. With complementary backgrounds in urban design, architecture, and industrial design, partners Craig Hodgetts and Ming Fung have a singular ability to integrate divergent needs in order to create memorable designs for specific projects. H&F has been awarded the AIA Golden Medal and the AIA California Council Firm of the Year Award. And notable projects include the design and the renovation of the Hollywood Bowl, Menlo Atherton Performing Arts Center, the Wild Beast Pavilion at Cal Arch, Jesuit High School Chapel in Sacramento, and Nashville's brand new Ascend Amphitheater. Craig Hodgetts, Fellow of the American Institute of Architects, founding principal and creative director of Hodgetts and Fung Design and Architecture. Craig Hodgetts is known for employing an imaginative weave of high technology and storytelling to invigorate his designs, producing an architecture that embraces contemporary ideology, information, culture, and evolving lifestyles. With a broad range background in automotive design, theater, and architecture, Craig brings dramatic concepts to the life by means of an uncompromising application of construction methodology. Craig is presently a professor at the UCLA Graduate School of Architecture and Urban Planning, and previously was a founding dean of the School of Design at the California Institute of the Arts. So, without further ado, I'm going to now introduce our guest tonight, Mr. Craig Hodgetts.
It works. Enough already. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's an honor.
Thank you. Hi. So glad to be here, and this is really remarkable. You'll have to forgive me a little bit. I've been teaching all afternoon, so this part is kind of there. So I'll be a little sotto voce, I guess, as we move along. But it was like a tremendous gift to our studio to be asked to work on the Frost Auditorium. It represents, I think, a high point in American design. You would never know that it was in this, nascent community adjacent to Los Angeles in the 1960s, birthing this really astonishing structure. It was built, and you already referred to this, by Flewelling and Moody. And they were an old line firm. They'd been in Los Angeles since 1910, which was their founding. They built a number of structures in a classical vein at USC. Several of their major halls, the one with the big tower, they built that. And then probably the thing that most everybody recognizes is the fountain at the corner of Santa Monica Boulevard and Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills, which they called the Electric Fountain as a landmark. And it was built in 1930. And it became their sort of main talking point. Now, when we ratchet forward to 1960s, there was all kinds of activity around the world, literally 1959, 1960, 1962, in building these, what were called thin shell concrete structures. This is in Italy. It's at a racetrack. The popularity of this kind of form among very, very, very advanced architectural cultures was a worldwide phenomenon. And they are all mostly, by UNESCO, have been nominated for UNESCO historic sites because these structures were so rare. One of the more famous architects for this was Felix Candela in Mexico, a Mexican architect who built a whole series of churches and other structures with this kind of remarkable structure. The thing is that there's a structural principle going here, which is with the right curvature, concrete can be made extremely thin and also extremely strong. The structure is called a monocoque, and you can see how thin that is. In Italy, Pierluigi Nervi was building structures for the Olympics, very, very similar technology. And at MIT, Saarinen, that's a name probably many of you recognize from mid-century modern furniture and his architecture, built the MIT Auditorium as a thin shell structure, and then moved on to build the TWA terminal, also as a thin shell structure. But this was all in this same period of time where the most adventurous architects of the period would somehow twist the arms of their clients to take this huge risk and build something unprecedented. And I think it's even more to the credit of Culver City that in 1963, the school board decides to build the Frost Auditorium. This is a one-of-a-kind effort. And one can only imagine the kind of consternation on the part of the contractors and everybody involved, well, is it going to stand up? What's going to happen when we put it together? Is your theory going to work? Well, we all know that it worked. And we all know that through earthquakes and all kinds of other events, this structure has endured. And in fact, when we went in for structural analysis, there wasn't a crack, nor a leak. So as a successful structure, there's no question that we should all applaud it. We have some construction photographs here from Julius Schulman. The ones in the archive room, I think, are even better. But you can see the scaffolding and the effort required to form these shapes. And the majority of the shapes along the big fan were cast on earth molds. They actually molded the earth and cast the concrete on top of that, and then lifted each piece up and into place. I don't have a photo documentation of that, but the structure stands. This is, again, a Schulman photograph. And you can see in the background there this sort of pleated thing, almost like a fabric that's pleated, or a Japanese fan that's pleated, and that's what gives it its strength. Now, while the exterior of the building is very remarkable, the interior was something that was profoundly underdeveloped. In fact, I think that's an understatement. There were huge challenges in simply providing enough light inside, and those of you who've been there recognize that. And secondly, there was never an effort made to make it a place for theatrical performance. It was designed as an auditorium. That means it had a stage, it had a curtain, and not much else. And so what transpired over the next few years, I've got to detour back to this for just a second. I got out of sequence. I do have one, but I'll take the custom one.
This is Jim.
That's good. That's just, I usually have a whiskey, but I'm a bourbon guy. The structure, I'm just a little detour here. This gives an idea of the kinds of structures, stresses inside the structure. Where it's red, it means it's really getting a lot of structural impact. And our studio, just a few years before the Frost Commission, had worked on the Wild Beast Pavilion at CalArts. And these are the structural images of the CalArts building under different wind conditions and things like that. So these tools did not exist at all when the Frost was built. And minus these tools, in today's world, we would never convince a building department to allow us to do this, right? So once again, that underscores the bravery of the guys out there. The CalArts thing is a big cantilever that moves out like that. So we're kind of inspired by the forces that created that, and that's the CalArts Pavilion. Flip back now to the interior of the Frost, with that little diversion. The sensation of walking into the building, the auditorium, is a bit melancholic, I would say, kind of deflating. The sense of celebration was just simply not something that could be accomplished within the constraints that existed then. And for that reason, the sort of efforts of the AVPA and the students, who were quite amazing, we met with many, many, many students, were nevertheless frustrated in many ways. They had this huge ambition, but the building's interior fitments kind of frustrated them. For instance, if you went into the shop and turned on the lights took 10 minutes to warm up and provide light before you could do anything in the shop. So as a result, the shop just became a bunch of, let's shove it in here and forget about it, right? So there were many, many aspects that led to a kind of lack of utility and maintenance in the building. This is the stage, and from the stage, we're looking out towards the audience, and you can see how the light just disappears by the time you get out over the audience. So our agenda was pretty clear: to make the building habitable, and secondly, these are some images around the building. I'll have some close-ups of those later. And as we did a feasibility study for it, we kept referring back to one we had done for the Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, which was in a similar state of deshabille when we worked on it. It wasn't even any longer Egyptian anymore. It had this big, 50s marquee. You know who did that? Mike Todd. You know why he did it?
No. Oh, what?
Liz was in Cleopatra, and they had a wide-screen cinemascope. The Egyptian Theater did not have that. He tore out all the Egyptian interiors to install a wide screen for the Cleopatra premiere. So, at any rate, we did have the opportunity to kind of revive it. This is what it looked like when we got it. Just complete wreck. And the earthquake had hit it, and that happened, and that was the interior. And so, with storyboards and just imagination, we did what any really California boy would have done. We dropped a V8 into it. And the reason I'm showing you this is it was a very similar condition. We couldn't touch the building. Right? It was too kind of, damaged and in such bad shape that we couldn't put any more pressure on it. So we created a whole theater insert that we just dropped into it to make it into a full-fledged theater. That's the old and that's the new, juxtaposed. And I'm showing you this because we used exactly the same strategy at the Frost. Because the shell structure of the Frost cannot take, any more than a piece of paper can, a heavy load. It will not accept a heavy load. So whatever we put into it has to be independent of that shell. So we employed exactly the same strategy that we used at the Egyptian Theater for what we were doing to put a theater inside of the shell, inside of the, that's in the courtyard after it got restored. So as we pursued a feasibility study, which was the right initial step, that was our commission from the school board and from David LaSalle, who, if you guys have ever met David, he's a plum. This would never have happened without David. He was astonishing. And he commandeered many, many people to talk about the frost. And we came up with 3 primary goals. The first one, surprisingly enough, was air quality. The air conditioning ducts and everything were in such bad shape that, the air was filled with all kinds of pollution. And secondly, you can see from this, oh, I got an arrow, good. But I can show you better here. The architects had decided to put all the air conditioning back here in what we call the drum. And to try to push it out to this extent, it's a couple of 100 feet. And then to distribute the air throughout the auditorium. And you can see that with this fan structure, all they could figure out to do was come out here and go under the floor back here and pump out a little tiny bit of air at the back. That's the condition of the air conditioning ducts. And the one that was underground, that's it. Literally that. And it would fill up with water, and it would get moldy, and it would fill up with water, and then the rats would have at it, and then who knows what air came out of the other end of it. Really, just amazing, right? Yeah. So there was something, I mean, to a certain extent, we can let them off the hook because 1963, what was the level of technology available and so forth. But it obviously needed to have an entirely new distribution system for the air. And so what we did was we looked at 3 different ways of pursuing that. And eventually we settled upon this one in the corner, which is feeding air into the space from a number of small units. Not so small, I mean big, but small. And by doing that, what happens? We got rid of, I'll do it with this, I can't reach up there. We got rid of all this equipment up here. And we freed up the whole second story of the drum. So as you'll see, with that move, we were able to make a high black box space by just moving all that stuff out of there. So this shows you how now the air is distributed from around the edge directly into the audience from individual units. So there's almost no piping involved. And the air, when it reaches the units, can be very, very carefully controlled. And as you can see in this drawing, we also got a little bit of extra energy, both acoustically and aesthetically, from having these pipes go out and cloaking them with what we're calling acoustic attenuators, which are fabric assemblies which absorb sound and which also provide a kind of rhythmic accent which we can light around the periphery of the building. There you see them in this view, and this is a close-up of those components. In order to accomplish this, we pump cool water around the exterior of the building and feed that into these various conditioning units. The second place that we looked at it was in terms of ADA requirements and the ability of all the students to be able to use the facility. In the initial plan, you can see here, there were these 2 narrow corridors that sort of squeezed through a little tiny space here onto the stage. And that's on the ground floor. And on the second floor, there were staircases that came up to the dressing rooms, boys and girls, and the makeup room. So in order to get dressed and put on your makeup, you had to go upstairs. No elevator, no anything. So what we decided to do was to reconstitute this. This is how you had to go upstairs to that area. And we said, well, there are two things in this drum. One is the pie-shaped rooms, which are not ideal for a shop where you're going to build sets, and are certainly not ideal as a teaching place. They were determined by the geometry of the building. Now, I have to tell you that in the 60s, the idea of geometry, overall, was a driving force among architects. And so by their peer groups and all of those elements, this would have been a very logical layout. But in terms of function, it was design before function. So, these are the dressing rooms. This is the washroom. This is the costume room. So in terms of functionality, here's what happened. All the air conditioning equipment was up here, and the dressing rooms up on this second level. Down here were a couple of classrooms. And by taking the air conditioning units out of here, we were able to put a black box theater in here with a high ceiling and a catwalk around it for lighting and all of that. And bring the dressing rooms and the men's and ladies' rooms downstairs. So it eliminated the need for an elevator, eliminated all of those functions, and gave us an ability to create an entirely new backstage area. We went through a number of iterations, you can see here, and we wound up with a configuration that looked like this. We had a black box theater, dressing room, men's and women's restrooms with showers, and very, very clean spaces, as opposed to the congestion which existed there before. And all of this without really changing the fundamental architecture of the building, which we treated like a precious stone. We did not, at any point, want to interfere with the basic premises of the architecture. So now we're looking at the stage. And what the stage lacked was catwalks, lighting positions, and the ability to move scenery up and down, and curtains up and down, and do the things that you need to do in a theater, right? Because we don't have that facility in the building as it is now. So here we are looking out at the audience. You can see how the light falls off. I think I showed you that slide before. This is the lighting, which is lighting the ceiling, not the stage, and the orchestra pit. Interesting thing about the orchestra pit, I mean, some of this, where the geometry drove the design, makes you scratch your head and you think, what were they thinking? Because, well, you can see it from this side. If you're a cellist and you're sitting on this side, you can't see the violinists on the other side. The stage is in between you. So there were just these consequences of geometry which required a little loving care to make work. So we were going to look at the orchestra pit and the stage machinery, the stuff that allows us to have a full theatrical production. So once again, we looked at a number of structural alternatives without touching the roof. Could not touch the roof, but we had to get lighting way out here above the audience because we need to light from a certain angle for a theatrical production. And we needed to find a structural device that would not put stresses on the building at all. And at the same time get something like 40 feet out over the audience. So this is a kind of structural essay. What we finally came up with was this very large arch, which bridges the audience and holds the catwalk aloft. And it would be made of steel, and I'll tell you who we were looking at like crazy as our inspiration, Alexander Culver. We were looking at Calder with his steel structures and the geometry of his steel pieces and said, okay, this is going to be as dramatic a piece and as honest a piece as a Calder. So that was the beginning of the excursion into this. You can see how far over the audience the lighting had to come in front of the stage. So here's the assembly of all the parts that we're putting into the building. Some of it inspired by what we did at the Hollywood Bowl. And so kind of, it's pretty interesting when you find these various themes kind of, reinforcing one another. And so in this case, the big arch, the geometry of that, we felt complemented the geometry of the building as a whole. It fit nicely into the cavity of the roof, and it supported this catwalk. So now we have a fly gallery. The sets can go up and down. In here we have lots of motors and line sets up here to pull curtains up and down, and we've got catwalks. Here's a sketch. The curtain, there is a theatrical curtain that goes around this rim and then comes back and goes into these pockets on the other side. Here's a model, kind of give you a better idea of what the whole assembly looks like. So look a little bit like that inside the space. So you can see here what we tried to do was create an entrance experience for audience members as they walk in around the circumference of the stage, of the theater. They will be walking below these attenuators, which will be illuminated, a little bit like lanterns. They will all glow. So as you walk in, you will be in a nicely lit area here. And then on this side, the arch will be lit and the curtain will be lit. So your entry experience, hopefully, will create a little bit of a buzz, give people a sense of excitement. One last bit, I haven't talked about it all, but it's one of the most intriguing parts of the structure. So here's the structure, right? And if I put some weight on it, on my hand, with my arthritic hand here, and I push down on it, it's going to spread out, right? So what the architects did, what Fung and Moody did, in their sole moment of avant-garde architecture, because they've returned to the norm, was they connect all of these with high tension rods, steel rods, which are under tension and holding this in this position. And they are under the floor. So our biggest challenge by far was when we put the foundations down for our arch, if we hit one of those, it'll explode. And quite literally, if one of those is severed, the building will explode. So this is the image we had in mind. I mean, this is what we felt. We were like white knuckles trying to devise a structural way to get between these and to take the force of this arch coming down. And we finally settled on a method which is called a micro pile. They're little skinny little piles, not a big one. Many, many of them surgically inserted. We'll do x-rays first. and insert those little piles, and then pour a top on it and bring the arch down on it. And so if you hear an explosive sound, you'll know somebody messed up. So this is the whole assembly. All the components are there. I'm afraid some people will be dismayed because we don't have the money to reupholster the seats. We're hoping that AVPA comes along with some cash. We don't have the money to restore the lobbies. Same deal. Your purse is talking to me.
That's right, I'm sorry.
Because we only dealt with the essentials. And that was our mission, that we had to make the air quality great. We had to make the theater performing so that students could learn about theatrical rigging, sets, all of that business. We had to make that great, and as good as it could be. We have state-of-the-art motors and all that kind of stuff included with that. And we had to make the back-of-house area, functional and ADA compliant. So those were the mandates. And, fortunately, we were able to squeeze all of that into the budget, which was $6 million, not a penny more. And the air conditioning alone is $2.5 million. So there wasn't a lot to go around, and we were really parsing every nickel and dime in the project. So the things that we think are, doable upgrades without engaging, an architectural or contractor even, are things like reupholster the seats. Fine. So we think we've dealt with the essentials, and we think we've given the building new life, but it's not the end of the road. To really make it sparkle, it's going to need some additional funds, because these are just stretched as far as they'll stretch. So here's a ghost of the stuff that's going to be in there, and here are some quasi-beauty shots of what it will be like once it's built. It's been one of the most exciting projects I've ever been involved with, including Hollywood Bowl, which was amazing.
Where did you put the orchestra?
Oh, the orchestra, we cut the stage is initially curved. We cut the stage flat and put an orchestra lift in there for handicapped people. So that now it's a larger pit, and we've got a line of sight between the two sides.
Did you upgrade the sound system at all?
Actually, there is a package for the sound system, which is what's called an ed alternate in the budget. It's designed, all the equipment is specified, the communication back-of-house system and the monitors, again, all specified and determined, but it's outside of the budget. So the contractor will be asked, because we don't really know where the bid is going to come in. We're pretty sure we've worked very constantly with both a big cost estimating firm and Balfour Beatty, who are contractors on the high school campus. And they've monitored this, and we've been through many iterations of cost value engineering. So, we're hopeful that we come in on the budget. If we come in enough below the budget, then the sound system is already designed, it goes right in. There are a couple of elements like that in the project, but that's a really good question. Yes, sir?
Any consideration made for the acoustic Could these changes on their effect on the acoustics of the room?
Oh, yeah. No, that's what, I'm calling those elements on the rear there, those guys, those blue things. The fabric on those is acoustically absorbent. And it will reduce the reverberation time. Because the big problem is that whole shell is a hard concrete shell. There is some sound absorbent material sprayed onto it, but it's very ineffective. And so what these acoustically absorbent fabric structures will do is kill some of the cross reverberation that's happening. And then because there's a cavity behind them, the acoustic theory is, which has worked every time we've tried it, but we've had some engineers working on it. The sound has to kind of go through the fabric, and then it's got to come back out again, right? And so you get double mileage for it by not being plastered against the ceiling like a acoustic tile, right? And these are very large surfaces. So what we've done, because we've been there when AVPA and a jazz band is in there, and it's deafening. You can't even, you can barely stand to be in the space. So we've, really emphasized the fact that we need to quiet the space down and make it more dead. Excuse me, just one more thing to say. It is also within our proposal that these fabric things can also be backed up with more sound absorbent material, very, very easily, because they can be lowered down if there's not sufficient dampening. Really good question, though.
I'm very curious to know the fate of the curtain. Is it like the cushions, or has
The curtain,
the curtain that you showed in some of the plans that would be enfolded left and right and then kind of extend up?
the curtain tracks around the, there we go. It tracks around, well, it crosses over right here to enclose the stage, and then it's stored on either side of the stage.
But is the actual curtain material?
Oh, we haven't selected the material yet.
But it's part of the whole plan. Is it paid for in other words?
Oh, no, it's not.
Okay. Sounds like,
That's an add-on.
it's like the seat covers.
It's like the seat covers, yes.
What is the schedule for completion?
Well, we just were granted the final stamp from the California State Architect. Long process. And that was on Friday, this Friday. Yeah. We felt like we needed a vacation, not applause. But thank you for the applause. So it's, right now, there are different strategies for the contracting, and that's going on behind some closed doors in the school district before they award the contract. But the plan looks like it's going to happen, that it'll be a fully operational facility a year from August, right, in time for that school year. It'll have to be shut down for a year, but they will start construction June 1st, probably. That's the idea. Yes?
I have two questions. One is, when they're doing this, are you going to be able to oversee the contractor at all?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that's better. And two is, how much are these add-ons, like the covering of the seats and the redoing of the entry, the lobby area, and the curtain that we need?
Oh, no, not that much. No, it's looking like north of maybe 300 to 400,000. It's not a huge amount.
Does the work include cleaning the ceiling?
No, cleaning the ceiling was going to cost $500,000. It's very, very high. You would need to remove the seats, and what a contractor charges to remove the seats is $100 per. I know. No, it all makes you a little crazy. So part of the function of the acoustic attenuators is to actually cover the ceiling. So we're getting a lot of mileage out of those. Yes, ma'am.
So, can you just, the original architects that you're talking about, they designed as well as built it?
How do you mean?
The original,
Architects, yes. They designed it, and our theory is that some young hotshot, fresh out of school, and enthusiastic as all beans, was hired into their office and propelled this project because it was way out of step with the work that they were doing. And the office did not continue to do work in that vein. So, it's one of those fortunate happenstances, I think. But Florelling, they did all the construction drawings, and then there was a contractor who built it. Yeah.
I had always heard it were other architects involved.
Oh, I would love to know.
It wasn't, clearly it wasn't.
Could be. Yeah, interesting.
Are you doing the outside too? Is it clean, all that?
Andy up to the bar.
It's a good rain.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Are there any records of how many of the roof panels broke?
Oh, during construction?
Yes.
I was just now looking at the photographs, which are amazing, in the archive room. And there's not a hint of that. They were, I don't know. I mean, I think it was seat of the pants engineering, I think. And they pulled it off. Well, this is a movie town. Yes?
Two quick questions. One, first is, in your $6 million budget, is there some cushion there for cost overruns? Because some of the stuff is problematic, you might run into issues.
No, that's all built into the bid documents. The contingency funds and in terms of raw construction, there's probably, the actual construction in terms of materials and labor probably runs in the $5 million range, and then there's insurance, contingency, overhead, etc.
And my other question is, of the $300,000 you were anticipating for other costs to try and bring it up so that the whole complete auditorium is at a level that duplicates what you're trying to do, is there some funding source that they have in mind in terms of trying to get that money so that it can be completed as one whole?
From the inception of the project, the AVPA, which is the Parent Support Group for the Performing Arts, has been in a conversation about raising the funds for those elements. I think their sense was that until it's a real project and there's tangible evidence that it's moving ahead, their fundraising would not have, would have been in vain. And so I think at this point, once ground is broken and progress is evident, because the way we've structured those add-ons, this is really Charles Wren is the bond manager for the project, and we've been working with him right through. And his metaphor is, if you turn the building upside down and shake it, the stuff that falls off can be add alternates, right? And so he pretty much determined, okay, the curtain, the seat upholstery, those things can be done with additional funds at any time those funds are available. Now, there are members in the school administration that would have been delighted to free up some more funds so it could be all done as one package. But that hasn't happened.
Was anything done with the exterior of the structure, more specifically the condition of the exterior dome?
Well, from a weatherproof and structural point of view, it's impeccable. I mean, it's perfect. There are no leaks and no cracks. It just weathered all those earthquakes just like a veteran.
I just mean that it's, it seems very much in need of paint.
It'd be nice to paint it. That'd be nice. Yes?
A lot of the conversation among parents at the school was concerns about asbestos and things like that. And, the general rule of asbestos is don't touch it if you don't have to.
Correct.
So I'm curious, what do you foresee as any asbestos remediations that you're going to have to be dealing with?
We're abiding by that. There was an asbestos survey done several years ago, and it determined which part was fungible, pardon me, and which part needed to be dealt with, and so that's all in part of it.
How many of those ducts were asbestos?
A lot of them. Yeah.
In terms of the lobby, what would you see as some possible future improvements? And then, can you talk more about the Black Box Theater? Having spent a lot of time taking classes, this looks completely different. I'm wondering what your mission was in terms of what that space has been used for and what it now will be.
The Black Box Theater. So the black box was in a wedge-shaped element, as I was showing earlier. And let's see if I can find it. Have to go all the way back.
It was really there was two sort of theater spaces. And I'm wondering if this is taking up both.
Okay, this, boy, back here. Okay. What was called the black box was this area here. And it was cloaked in black curtains, and it had a low ceiling, just at this height that you see in this drawing. And the shape was not very conducive to production. And there was no, this is the shop over here. There was no practical way to build a set in the shop, get it through that door, this secondary door, this other door, and finally into there. So the proposed black box is here. There's a very, very large acoustical roll-up door at this point. Another very large acoustical door here. So we can shuttle large stage elements directly from the shop into the black box. We can also shuttle directly from the black box onto the stage. So it's like a machine back here now. It's all designed to be 100% functional. And now we have a 2-story high space and a catwalk that goes all the way around it. So it's a profoundly different black box, which I think is going to be a really exciting performance space. Yes, ma'am?
I played in that backstage for 4 years, and the stagecraft room, then it was the drama room, and on the other corridor was the music room, which is the black box.
Right.
So you're, actually, the drama room will go away. Will they just
The
take
drama room goes away. It's gone.
And
It'll be in another building on campus.
so they'll have the classes for drama in a different area?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
How many people will the new black box seat?
I think it's 120. It will be on portable, folding seats, exactly, so that it can be all cleared for dance rehearsals and things like that. And then the folding in seats can be employed for an audience. Yeah, it's going to be cool.
I assume those folding seats are part of the alt ed, whatever.
No, they're not. They're in there. They're going to have the best upholstery of the whole place. Yes.
So with the arch structure coming into part of where the audience is, how many seats are we losing in the?
12.
12? Wow, that's lovely.
We're losing a couple of other seats, actually, because of increased ADA requirements. I couldn't tell you the exact number. I'd have to look at what it finally wound up to be. We've lost maybe 20 seats overall. Yes?
So much of the theater nowadays, the sets, the lights, everything is run by computers.
Yes.
Will that work here?
That's the way it's being designed. There's a computer lighting console, and it's really interesting. I mean, this is a little boring, but not really boring. In the old days, from your control booth, you had really fat wires running to every single light. And there were hundreds of lights, right? So now all of that is done where the computer actuates the light at the source of the power, and only very slender lines have to go out to the lights. So that's a huge saving, actually. So a computer-controlled lighting system is less expensive than an old-fashioned one. Bravo, Steve Jobs. Yes?
I might have missed it if you said it before, but when did your firm actually start work on this?
I think 4 years ago. Yeah, but there was about a year of the feasibility study. And then, some period of time before the board authorized the project to move forward, to green light the project. And then it's been almost 9 months in the DSA under their review. I think, frankly, they didn't quite know what to do with it because it was so unusual. And so they were very, very, very particular about every element. Yeah. Yes?
Any structural changes to the control room or whatever?
Yes, there is a minor one. Well, you would think maybe that it was major, but in the context of everything else, it was minor. There was also no ADA access to the control room. So we've lowered the control room to the audience level. It's at the audience level, so that everybody has access to it. And the platform where the control booth was is a lighting position for trooper spotlights and things of that nature. Yes? These are great questions.
I want to go back to the prior question about if you were to redo the lobby, what would you do?
Well, okay. And this would push it up above the number I said. But the number I gave was one where you could do it for this. But the glass wall outside of the lobby is not a double thick glass. It's a single pane glass, and there's an awful lot of energy being lost there. Now, it can be grandfathered in under the energy code, because if we don't touch it, then we would have to bring it up to contemporary code. And we already had a huge, before the project could get launched, we had to convince the DSA of a lot of elements that needed to be grandfathered in. They initially wanted us to change the pitch, the slope of the entire audience. Yeah, and then the cost would have been through the roof. So there were lengthy negotiations about what you could touch and what you couldn't touch. So we decided that we could not touch that wall. If the funds are available, then it should be replaced with a more substantial curtain wall. Aside from that, the lobby, what we have put in the lobby is a wheelchair lift that runs along the stairs, again for ADA compliance. The floor is actually in pretty good shape. So it would be, for the minimal budget, we would just deal with lighting and paint, just fix it up, make it more cosmetic. Well, we are remodeling the bathrooms, the public bathrooms. That's within the budget. That's a given.
I have to say, my dad's in a wheelchair, and I do take him to the frost.
Oh, do you?
And I can understand the DSA's comment about the incline, because it is actually quite difficult to move.
That's correct. That's right.
Half of everybody is maybe accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we agree with that 100%.